I lost everything in my divorce until one legal clause made me a multimillionaire. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. That's garbage. Real revenge is like vintage whiskey. You watch it age in the dark for years. I lost the battle for the bar, but I didn't know I'd won the war, thanks to a $2 ticket she kept in the glove box of a car I gave her and she despised. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My old Ford Bronco finally gave up the ghost on a Tuesday morning. 15 years of loyal service, and it died right there in my driveway with a wheeze that sounded almost apologetic. I needed to get to the wholesale market downtown. Restaurant supply run. So I took her car. When I say her car, I mean the Audi Q5 in midnight blue that I bought her for our 10th anniversary. Spent 3 months of profits on that thing. I remember the moment I showed it to her, standing in our driveway with a bow on top, like some idiot from a car commercial. She looked at it the way you'd look at a sweater from an aunt you don't like. Cute, she said, but I actually wanted red. Not thank you. Not this is beautiful. Just that she wanted red. She'd been driving that Audi for 2 years and still complained about the color every chance she got. Like it was some kind of personal insult I committed against her. Our marriage at that point was barely a marriage. It was more like a Cold War with shared bathroom space. The last 6 months had been especially brutal. She was always nervous, always irritable. Everything I did was wrong. The way I loaded the dishwasher, the way I breathed, apparently. We hadn't touched each other in 4 months. Not even accidentally. I run a bar downtown. Well, I ran a bar. The Alibi Room. 22 years I'd worked there. Started as a barback when I was 19. Worked my way up to manager, then bought into ownership when the old man retired. My wife Elena inherited her father's trust fund when he passed, and we used that money to buy out the remaining shares. On paper, the trust owned everything, but I built that place with my own hands. So that Tuesday morning, I climbed into the Audi that smelled like her expensive perfume and some kind of floral air freshener I'd never bought. I drove to Route 7, the gas station off the highway that I always stopped at, filled up the tank, grabbed a coffee that tasted like battery acid mixed with regret, and then I did something I'd done once a month for the past 20 years. I bought a Powerball ticket. $2. Same numbers every time. 10, 22, 31. My mother's birthday, my father's birthday, and mine. Mom had died 3 years back. Cancer. Dad went 2 years before her. Heart attack while watching the evening news. They were the only family I had who mattered, so I kept playing their numbers. Not because I believed in luck. I'm a bar manager. I believe in inventory counts and profit margins, but it felt like keeping them alive somehow. Stupid, I know, but we all have our rituals. I tossed that ticket into the Audi's glove box. Didn't even look at it twice. Just shoved it right on top of the stack of Elena's old manicure receipts. $90 for nails. Every 2 weeks like clockwork. I forgot about that ticket faster than a customer forgets their umbrella on a rainy night. I had no idea I'd just put the pin from a grenade into a car she hated. The wholesale market was the same, as always. Restaurant suppliers trying to unload expired stock with a smile. I loaded up on bar napkins, cocktail stirrers, the cheap stuff that keeps a business running. Got back in the Audi around noon. Started heading home. That's when I remembered. My Bronco. I'd left it at Manny's auto service the week before when it broke down near the airport. Old Manny was supposed to call me with an estimate, but he never did. Manny runs on his own timeline. I figure I should at least swing by and get my keys back, maybe hear how bad the damage was. I took the exit off Highway 40. Manny's shop is on this old access road that time forgot. Cracked asphalt and faded road signs. The kind of place where the America you see in old photographs still exists, just peeling and sad. The shop sits right behind this place called the Motel 6. And I don't mean one of those chain Motel 6 places you see on road trips. This was the kind of motel that rents rooms by the hour. The kind with parking spots that face away from the road. Broken neon sign. Rooms that probably get cleaned twice a year, whether they need it or not. I was pulling into Manny's parking lot when I saw it. A beat-up yellow Mustang from the 90s. Primer spots on the hood. That specific shade of construction site yellow that looks like a warning sign. I'd know that car anywhere because I'd heard about it for 2 years straight. It belonged to David. David was Elena's quote-unquote business partner. He'd invested in the bar about 18 months back. Some money from an inheritance, he said. Wanted to get into the restaurant industry. He was younger than me by maybe 7 years. Always wore expensive watches he definitely couldn't afford. Had that gym rat build and the kind of smile that made you want to check if your wallet was still in your pocket. Elena had insisted we bring him on. Said we needed fresh capital for renovations. I thought it was a terrible idea, but the trust was in her name, so technically it was her call. What the hell was David doing at a pay-by-the-hour motel at 11 in the morning on a Tuesday? I didn't even think. I just pulled the Audi across the street and parked behind a dumpster, killed the engine, and I waited. My hands were shaking, not because I knew what I was about to see, but because somewhere deep in my gut, in that place where truth lives before your brain catches up, I already knew. The door to room 12 opened. David walked out first. He was wearing the same clothes he'd worn to the bar the night before. Jeans and that black polo he thought made him look sophisticated. He was laughing at something. Turned back toward the door. And then she walked out. Elena, my wife, wearing her yoga outfit. The expensive Lululemon stuff she always wore to her Tuesday morning sessions. Except there was no yoga studio within 5 miles of this motel. I didn't feel what I expected to feel. I thought I'd be angry, betrayed, heartbroken. But what I actually felt was something much colder. It was like watching the last piece of a puzzle click into place. The relief of finally understanding a mystery you didn't even know you were solving. All those evenings she'd worked late at the bar with David. All those headaches that meant I slept on the couch. All those girls' nights out that she came home from smelling like cigarette smoke even though none of her friends smoked. All the time she flinched when I touched her. All the small cruelties and cold shoulders and moments of contempt. They weren't random. They were guilt and resentment. She'd already left me in every way that mattered. Her body just hadn't gotten around to following through yet. I watched them stand outside that motel room. David had his hand on her lower back. She was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. Maybe years. They looked happy, comfortable, like people who'd done this before, many times before. He kissed her. Not some quick peck. A real kiss. The kind that says this isn't new. My phone was in my hand. I don't even remember taking it out. I just raised it, pointed, clicked. The photo wasn't great, a little bit blurry, but you could see everything that mattered. David, Elena, the motel, room 12 visible in the background, timestamp clear as day. I sat in that Audi for another 20 minutes, watched him get in his yellow Mustang, watched him drive away toward downtown, probably headed to the bar, to my bar, to stand behind my counter and pretend they gave a damn about profit margins and customer service while I worked myself into the ground. There's an old bar rule I learned years ago. When a customer starts a fight, they already decided to do it an hour before. You just miss the signs. I felt hollowed out, but I had something now. Evidence. Truth. And in a weird way, that was almost comforting. At least I wasn't crazy. I didn't go to Manny's shop. I just drove home, parked the Audi in the driveway. When inside our little house in the suburbs with a mortgage we were barely making in the lawn I mowed every Sunday. I sat at the kitchen table, opened a beer even though it was only 1 in the afternoon, and I waited. Elena came home at 7. I heard her car in the driveway, the front door opening, her keys hitting the bowl on the entry table like they had 1,000 times before. She walked into the kitchen like it was any other day. She smelled wrong, not like her usual perfume, like cheap soap and something else I couldn't quite place. Motel soap, the kind that comes in those little wrap bars that fall apart in your hands. "Hey," she said, "didn't expect you home so early." I didn't say anything, just slid my phone across the table. Screen up, photo open. She looked at it. I watched her face. Waited for the color to drain, for the panic, for the stammering excuses. But Elena was never one for shame. That would have required caring what I thought. She looked at that photo of her and David outside the Motel 6, and she just sighed, like I'd caught her eating ice cream before dinner instead of destroying 13 years of marriage. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Since about noon," I said. "How long has it been going on? Does it matter?" "Yeah," I said. "It matters." She leaned against the counter, crossed her arms, and right there in our kitchen, with the wedding photos still hanging on the wall behind her, she just shrugged. 8 months, she said. Maybe 9. I don't know. I stopped keeping track. 8 months. While I was working double shifts to keep the bar afloat. While I was visiting my mother in hospice care during her final weeks. While I was planning our anniversary dinner that she canceled last minute because she said she had food poisoning. Why? I asked. Just tell me why. She laughed. Actually laughed. This short, bitter sound. Because I'm tired, Mark. I'm tired of living with someone who smells like whiskey and grease. I'm tired of this house. I'm tired of pretending I'm happy. David makes me feel alive. You make me feel like I'm drowning. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to demand how dare she blame me for her infidelity. But I just sat there, because part of me had known this was coming for years. You can feel a relationship dying the same way you can feel weather changing. The air gets different. She walked to our bedroom, started throwing clothes into a suitcase. I followed her, watched her pack up 2 years of lies into 3 bags. I'm filing for divorce, she said. I already talked to a lawyer last week. Of course she had. This wasn't spontaneous. This was planned, calculated. I was just the last person to get the memo. And I'm taking the Audi, she added. That was a gift. It's mine. Something in the way she said it. So possessive, so entitled. The Audi she complained about since day one. The Audi I'd bought with money I'd earned. Sure, I said. Take it. She looked at me then. Really looked at me. Like she was trying to figure out if I was going to fight. If I was going to make this difficult. But I was so tired. Tired of fighting for scraps of affection. Tired of being treated like an inconvenience in my own life. Fine, she said. I'll send David for the rest of my stuff later. Of course. David, her business partner, her affair partner, probably her next husband. Knowing Elena, she always had a plan, always had the next step figured out before the current one was finished. She grabbed her bags, walked to the front door, turned back one last time. I hope you figure your life out, Mark. I really do. Then she was gone. I heard the Audi start up. Heard her pull out of the driveway. The sound of the engine fading down our quiet suburban street. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, looked at the empty spaces where her clothes had been, the bare hangers, the missing shoes, evidence of an absence that had started long before she physically left. My phone buzzed. Text from David. Bro, we need to talk about the schedule for this weekend. Big group reservation. Bro, like we were friends. Like he hadn't just blown up my entire life. I stared at that text. Bro, like we were friends. Like he hadn't just destroyed everything. I didn't respond. Turned off my phone. Went back to the kitchen. Opened another beer. The house was too quiet. 13 years of marriage. 22 years of building a business. All of it collapsing in the span of one afternoon. I sat at that kitchen table until the beer got warm. Then I opened another one. The wedding photos on the wall seemed to be mocking me. Look how happy you used to be. Look how stupid you were. My phone kept buzzing on the counter where I'd left it. Probably David again. Probably Elena. Probably my entire life falling apart in real time while I sat there like an idiot drinking cheap beer in the dark. I thought about my parents. Mom with her crossword puzzles every Sunday morning. Dad with his terrible jokes that made Mom laugh anyway. They'd been married 43 years when he died. She followed him 2 years later. The doctor said cancer, but I knew better. She died because half of her was already gone. I used to think that kind of love was weakness, needing someone so much that losing them destroys you. Now I understood it was the only thing that mattered. And I'd never had it. Not really. Elena had been planning her exit strategy while I was planning anniversary dinners. My life was broken. My marriage was over. The woman I'd loved for 13 years had just driven away in a car I'd bought her, heading toward a future that didn't include me. I finished the beer, thought about opening another one, thought about a lot of things, but mostly I just sat there in the dark, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do with the rest of my life. I didn't have an answer. All I had was an empty house, a failing business I was about to lose, and the crushing certainty that I'd just lived through the worst day of my life. The lawyer called 11 days after Elena left. I was at the bar. Well, my former bar. I didn't know it was my former bar yet, but I was about to find out. I was doing inventory in the back room, counting bottles of whiskey, and trying not to think about how Elena and David were probably laughing about me somewhere. The phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Wish I hadn't. The voice on the other end was smooth. Too smooth. Like oil on water. This is Richard Castellano, calling on behalf of Elena Morrison. We're filing dissolution paperwork next week. My client requests you retain separate counsel. You'll be served within 48 hours. That's how it started. Not with a conversation. Not with an attempt at fairness. With a legal ambush delivered in the tone of someone ordering lunch. You know what divorce is in America? It's when two people who used to finish each other's sentences pay two other people in expensive suits $500 an hour to help them divide up a toaster. Except in my case, the toaster was a business I'd built with my own hands, and they wanted to take it all. I hired a lawyer, guy named Tom Chun. Good man, honest, the kind of lawyer who actually returns your calls. But he was a small-time family attorney who handled custody disputes and property splits for middle-class couples in the suburbs. He drove a Honda Civic with a bumper sticker that said my kid is an honor student. Elena hired Richard Castellano. The Richard Castellano. The guy whose face was on billboards downtown. The guy who'd taken down 3 city councilmen in corruption cases and walked away with 7-figure settlements. He drove something German that cost more than my house. We met in his office 4 weeks after Elena left, day 40-something of my new terrible life. His office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. You could see the whole downtown skyline. The bar was visible from up there. Just a small brick building nestled between a pawn shop and a dry cleaner. It looked tiny from that height. Insignificant. That was the point, I realized. He wanted me to see how small I was. Tom and I sat on one side of a conference table that probably cost more than my car. Elena sat on the other side. David sat next to her. Not across the room. Not in the waiting area. Right next to her. Like he had a right to be there. She wouldn't look at me. Just stared at her phone, scrolling through something, probably texting someone about how annoying this whole process was, how I was making everything difficult by existing. Castellano slid a folder across the table. It landed in front of Tom with a soft thud. The factor's simple, Castellano said. He had one of those voices that made everything sound like a closing argument. The alibi room is owned by the Morrison Family Trust. Always has been. My client generously allowed your client to work there in a managerial capacity. He was compensated. He was never an owner. I felt something crack inside my chest. Worked there, like I was some hired help who showed up, pulled a few beers, and went home. Tom opened the folder, started reading. I watched his face change. Watched him realize how bad this was. He tried. I'll give him that. Tom might have been outmatched, but he tried. My client invested 15 years of labor into that establishment, Tom said. His voice shook a little. He couldn't help it. We were in a knife fight, and he'd brought a butter knife. He turned a failing dive bar into the most profitable establishment in the district. Sweat equity alone entitles him to. Castellano didn't even let him finish. Just held up one hand like he was stopping traffic. Sweat equity. He said it like Tom had just claimed the earth was flat. Let me be clear. Your client was an employee. A well-compensated employee. But an employee nonetheless. The business was owned by the trust before the marriage. It remained trust property throughout the marriage. Missouri is not a community property state. Separate property remains separate. I watched David smile. Not a big smile. just a little twitch at the corner of his mouth. He was enjoying this. Tom tried to rally, started talking about added value, about profit increases under my management, about how I'd personally guaranteed loans to keep the place afloat during the downturn back in '08, about how I'd worked 80-hour weeks for years. Castellano waited for him to finish, patient, like a cat watching a mouse run out of places to hide. Then he slid a piece of paper across the table. A bank statement. Your client has $1,200 in his checking account, Castellano said. His voice was casual, conversational, like he was commenting on the weather. We have $500,000 reserved just for legal fees. We can litigate this for 5 years. We can bury him in discovery requests, depositions, motions. And when we're done, we'll sue him for frivolous litigation and take the house too. The room went quiet. I could hear the air conditioning, someone's phone buzzing, the sound of my future collapsing. Tom looked at me, and I saw it in his eyes. Defeat. He was a good lawyer, but he was also a realist. He knew exactly what was about to happen. Of course, Castellano continued, his tone shifting to something almost kind. We're not unreasonable people. We're prepared to offer settlement. Your client signs a complete release, acknowledging he was never an owner and has no claim to the business. In exchange, we don't pursue claims against his personal assets. He keeps the house. We keep the bar. Everyone walks away. Everyone walks away. Except I'd be walking away with nothing while they took everything I'd built. There's a moment in every negotiation at a bar when you realize the customer isn't going to tip. You can see it in their face. The decision's already made. They're just going through the motions. That's what this was. A performance. They'd already decided to take everything. This meeting was just them being merciful enough to let me surrender. I looked at Elena. Finally looked at her. She was watching me now. Her expression was blank. Not angry. Not sad. Just nothing. Like I was a stranger she'd never met. How long? I asked. My voice sounded strange in my ears. How long were you planning this? She didn't answer. Just looked away. David leaned forward, rested his elbows on the table. That smile again. Business is business, Mark. No hard feelings. I wanted to flip the table. Wanted to grab him by his expensive shirt and throw him through Castellano's stupid window. But I didn't, because that's what they wanted. They wanted me to lose control, to give them ammunition, to prove I was unstable. So I just sat there, a man watching his life get carved up by people in suits. Tom asked for a recess. Castellano gave us 20 minutes. Tom and I went to a conference room down the hall. Smaller, no view, just beige walls and a table with a water stain. Mark, Tom said. He looked exhausted, like this case had aged him 5 years and a month. I can fight this, but it'll take years, and it'll cost everything you have, your savings, your house, and there's a real chance we lose anyway. The trust structure is solid. They have documentation. They have resources. He didn't say what we both knew, that I was going to lose either way. The only question was whether I'd lose everything or just most things. What do you recommend? I asked. Tom took off his glasses, rubbed his eyes. Take the deal. Keep your house. Start over. It's not fair. It's not right. But it's the smart play. Smart. I'd been smart my whole life. Smart enough to build a business from nothing. Smart enough to work myself half to death. Smart enough to love a woman who was planning to destroy me. Maybe it was time to stop being smart. But what choice did I have? I had $1,200 and a mortgage I could barely afford. They had $500,000 and a lawyer who probably ate guys like me for breakfast. We went back into Castellano's office. I told Tom I'd take the deal. He nodded, started negotiating the details. And that's when Tom did the one smart thing that would change everything. I want a finality clause, Tom said. Castellano raised an eyebrow. Go on. Tom pulled out his laptop, started typing. Both parties agree the settlement is final and complete. Each party waives any and all future claims against the other, regardless of future income, inheritance, or any unforeseen windfalls. I barely paid attention. I was thinking about the bar, about all those nights staying late to fix the broken ice machine, about the regulars who'd become friends, about the life I was losing. Castellano read Tom's proposed language, shrugged. Fine. My client has no issue with that. Why would she? Elena was getting the bar, the profitable business with the prime location and the loyal customer base. What future windfall could I possibly have? I was a broke bartender about to be unemployed. They drew up the paperwork. Pages and pages of legal language that basically said I was nobody, that I contributed nothing, that I deserved nothing. There was a line in there about how I'd been a hired manager and nothing more. Reading that felt like swallowing glass. But buried in the middle of page 7 was Tom's clause. Section 11A, final settlement and waiver of future claims. Both parties waive any and all claims to future assets, income, or unforeseen windfalls. I signed it. Elena signed it. David witnessed it, which felt like a final insult. Him, watching me sign away my life. We had a court date scheduled for day 70. Just a formality. The judge would review our settlement agreement and stamp it approved. Most divorce hearings last about 15 minutes when both parties agree. Those last few weeks were a blur. I worked at the bar until the day before the hearing. Elena and David let me. Probably because they needed someone to actually run the place while they figured out how to do it themselves. The staff knew something was wrong. Sarah, our head waitress who'd been there for 8 years, pulled me aside one night. "You okay, boss? You look like hell." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just some personal stuff." She didn't believe me, but she didn't push. People in the service industry learn when to give someone space. My last shift was a Saturday night. Packed house. I worked the bar like always. Made drinks. Told jokes. Pretended my world wasn't ending. At closing time, I did a final inventory. Cleaned the taps. Wiped down the bar top until it shined. I stood there in the empty bar at 2 a.m. Looked at the place I'd spent half my life building. The Edison bulbs I'd installed. The reclaimed wood bar top I'd sanded and sealed myself. The vintage beer signs I collected over years. None of it was mine. Legally, it never had been. Day 70. The courthouse was downtown. One of those old buildings with marble floors and too many columns. Made everyone look small. Made everything feel official and unchangeable. I wore my only suit, the one I'd gotten married in. It didn't fit quite right anymore. I'd lost weight over the past 2 months. Stress will do that. Tom met me outside the courtroom. He had his briefcase and a folder of documents. He looked tired. This case had taken a lot out of him. "It'll be quick," he said. Judge reviews the agreement. Asks if anyone objects. Stamps approved. You'll be legally divorced by lunch. Elena arrived with Castellano. She wore a black dress. Looked professional. Composed. Like she was going to a business meeting. Not the end of a marriage. David was with her. Of course he was. He wore a suit that probably cost more than my car. We sat on opposite sides of the courtroom. Didn't look at each other. Didn't speak. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Patricia Hartwell. She had reading glasses on a chain and the expression of someone who'd seen every type of human misery and stopped being surprised by any of it. She reviewed our settlement agreement, flipped through the pages. Her expression didn't change. This settlement agreement states that Mr. Morrison was an employee manager of the alibi room and holds no ownership stake. Is this your understanding, Mr. Morrison? Yes, Your Honor. The words tasted like ash. And you agree to waive all claims to the business in exchange for retaining sole ownership of the marital home at 2847 Oak Street? Yes, Your Honor. She looked at Elena. And you agree to these terms, Mrs. Morrison? I do, Your Honor. Judge Hartwell flipped to page 7, section 11A. She read it, paused. This clause is unusual. Both parties waive claims to future windfalls? Tom stood up. Yes, Your Honor. It provides finality. Ensures neither party can come back later with additional claims. The judge looked at Castellano. Any objection? Castellano stood. His movements were smooth. Practiced. None whatsoever, Your Honor. My client agrees completely. Why would he object? They'd won. The bar was theirs. This clause was just housekeeping, just closing a door that would never open anyway. Judge Hartwell signed the agreement, stamped it with her seal. The sound of that stamp was like a door slamming shut. This court approves the settlement agreement. The marriage between Mark Morrison and Elena Morrison is hereby dissolved. Both parties are bound by the terms of this agreement. She hit her gavel once. Sharp. Final. It was over. I walked out of that courtroom a divorced man. No wife. No business. Just a house I could barely afford and a future that looked like a blank wall. In the hallway, Elena and David walked past me. She looked straight ahead. Didn't even glance my way. David was on his phone, already talking about something else. I'd been erased from their lives as cleanly as a name wiped from a chalkboard. Tom patted me on the shoulder. I'm sorry, Mark. I know this isn't what you wanted. It's fine, I said. I wasn't fine. But what else was I supposed to say? I drove home in the Bronco. Old Manny had finally fixed it. Cost me $800 of my $1,200. I had $400 in the bank, a mortgage payment due in 2 weeks, and no job. I sat in my driveway for 20 minutes before I could make myself go inside. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I'd been living alone for 2 months, but it still felt wrong. Like I was trespassing my own life. I went to the kitchen, opened a beer, sat at the table where Elena and I used to eat breakfast together, where I confronted her with that photo, where 13 years of marriage had ended in one conversation. On the table in front of me was the settlement agreement, all 43 pages of it. I'd been carrying it around in my bag since the hearing. I opened it, started reading through it one more time, looking for something, anything I'd missed. Page after page of legal language that basically said I was nobody, that I'd built nothing, that I deserved nothing. And then, buried in the middle of page 7, I found it again. Section 11A, final settlement and waiver of future claims. Both parties agree the settlement is final and complete. Each party hereby waives and releases any and all claims, present or future, against the other party, including but not limited to claims related to future income, inheritance, lottery winnings, or any other unforeseen financial windfalls of any nature whatsoever. I read it 3 times. Tom had insisted on that language. Castellano had agreed to it without even blinking. Why would he care? Elena had the bar, the profitable business, the future. What possible windfall could I have? I was a 41-year-old divorced bartender with $400 in the bank. I closed the document, took a long drink of beer. There's this thing that happens when you lose everything. People talk about rock bottom like it's a place you can identify, like there's a sign that says welcome to the worst day of your life. But it's not like that. Rock bottom is just Tuesday afternoon, sitting in an empty house, reading the legal document that destroyed your life. The divorce was final. Elena got the bar. David got Elena. I got the house, the debt, and one meaningless paragraph buried on page 7 that both sides had agreed to because neither of us thought it mattered. I finished the beer, stared at that settlement agreement. Section 11A stared back at me. Just words on paper. Legal boilerplate that meant nothing to nobody. They'd won. I'd lost. And all I had to show for 15 years of work was a house I could barely afford and a clause about future windfalls that would never exist. I put my head down on the table, and I tried to figure out how to survive what came next. 3 months after the divorce, I was sitting on the floor of my living room eating cereal straight from the box and watching my ancient TV that I'd rescued from the curb when a neighbor was throwing it out. The job search wasn't going well. Actually, that's a lie. The job search was going terribly. I'd applied to 43 bartending positions in the Tri-County area. Got 3 interviews. 0 offers. Word travels fast in the restaurant industry. And David had made sure the word that traveled was that I was difficult, unreliable, and had substance problems. None of it was true. But truth doesn't matter when someone with money and connections wants to bury you. I'd sold most of my furniture to make mortgage payments. The living room was empty except for that donated TV sitting on a cardboard box. I was eating generic brand cornflakes with no milk because milk costs money. My bank account had $63 in it. The TV was on in the background. Local news. I wasn't really watching, just staring at the wall, trying to figure out which bill I could skip this month without ending up homeless. The news anchor was one of those aggressively cheerful women with teeth, so white they probably glowed in the dark. She was talking about something. Traffic. Weather. I wasn't listening. And then she said something that made my brain suddenly tune in. In an absolutely incredible turn of events, the winner of May's record-breaking Powerball jackpot still hasn't come forward. Can you believe it? $457 million, and nobody's claimed it. The winner has just 25 days left before the ticket expires, and the money goes back into the prize pool. I stared at the TV, my spoon hovering halfway to my mouth. $457 million. Won in May. May. That was 3 months ago. Right when everything fell apart. Right when I stopped paying attention to anything except survival. The anchor kept talking, her voice bright with manufactured excitement. Let's remind every one of those winning numbers one more time. If you bought a ticket in May, check your pockets. The winning numbers were 10, 22, 31, 47, 52, and Powerball 18. The spoon fell from my hand, hit the floor. Corn flakes scattered across the cheap carpet. 10, 22, 31. Mom's birthday. Dad's birthday. Mine. The ticket. The memory hit me like a freight train. Route 7 gas station. Elena's Audi. $2. Those numbers. The same numbers I played every month for 20 years. I bought a ticket the morning my Bronco died. The morning I took her car to the wholesale market. The morning before I saw her at the Motel 6. I'd thrown that ticket in the glove box, right on top of her manicure receipts. And then my entire life exploded, and I forgot about it. Completely forgot about it. My brain had been occupied with lawyers and betrayal and trying not to drown. A $2 lottery ticket wasn't even a blip on my radar. But now, right now, that ticket was sitting in a glove box, in a car I'd given to Elena, in a car she'd driven away in a car that was legally hers. $457 million in the midnight blue Audi she'd always hated. My hands were shaking. I stood up, started pacing. My mind was racing through scenarios. Did she know? Had she found it? No. No way. If Elena had found a winning lottery ticket, it would have been all over the news by now. She would have hired Castellano to make sure she got every penny. She would have thrown a party. She definitely wouldn't have kept quiet about it. So the ticket was still there. Had to be. She never cleaned out that glove box. It was always full of receipts and napkins and broken sunglasses. She probably hadn't opened it in months. But here's the thing. I had no claim to that car. The divorce was final. The Audi was hers. And even if I could prove I bought the ticket, any competent lawyer would argue it was purchased during the marriage using marital funds. Community property. We'd split it 50-50 at best. Except Section 11A, the clause Tom had insisted on, the clause Castellano had agreed to without thinking twice, because it seemed meaningless at the time. Both parties waive any and all claims to future assets, income, lottery winnings, or any other unforeseen financial windfalls. If that ticket was still in the glove box, if I could get my hands on it, if I could claim it before the deadline, then Elena couldn't touch it. She'd sign away her rights to any lottery winnings. She'd agreed to it. Her shark lawyer had agreed to it. The irony was almost beautiful. They'd been so focused on taking the bar that they'd sign away a fortune without even knowing it. But I had a problem. Actually, I had several problems. Problem one, I had no access to that car. It was Elena's property. I couldn't just break into it. That's theft. That's a crime that would invalidate any claim to the ticket. Problem two, I had 25 days. Maybe less. I didn't know the exact deadline. Problem three, I had no idea if the ticket was even still there. 3 months. Anything could have happened. She could have cleaned out the glove box. Could have found the ticket and thrown it away not knowing what it was. Could have taken the car to a detailer who emptied everything. I sat back down on the floor, tried to think clearly, tried to figure this out. And then something occurred to me. Something about Elena that I'd known for 13 years, but had never really thought about strategically until right now. Elena hated that car, complained about it constantly. And according to Sarah, my former head waitress who still texted me occasionally, the bar was hemorrhaging money. Elena and David had no idea how to run a restaurant. They'd alienated half the regulars. The staff was quitting. They were drowning. I grabbed my laptop, the old Dell I'd bought in college that took 5 minutes to boot up, opened a browser, went to AutoTrader, typed in Audi Q5 Midnight Blue, local area, hit search, and there it was. First result, 2015 Audi Q5, Midnight Blue, 47,000 miles, excellent condition, asking $31,000. Must sell quickly. The listing had been posted 2 days ago. The phone number was Elena's cell. I stared at that listing for a solid 5 minutes, my brain working through the angles, the possibilities, the risks. She was selling the car with the ticket, the car she'd always hated. She needed money because the bar was failing, and she had no idea she was about to sell a vehicle containing a $457 million lottery ticket. I had 25 days, and I just found my way into the fortress. I didn't need to break in. I didn't need to steal. I needed something much simpler. I needed her to invite me in. I needed her to hand me that ticket herself, willingly, with witnesses. And I knew exactly how to make her do it, because I knew Elena. I knew what made her tick. I knew her weaknesses, greed, and the opportunity to humiliate me one last time. I spent the next 2 hours setting up a trap. First, I created a new email address, robertwilsoninvestments@gmail.com. Then I got a burner phone from the convenience store. Paid cash. $29 I couldn't really afford, but this was an investment. I sent Elena a text from the burner number. Hello, I saw your Audi Q5 listing on AutoTrader. Very interested. I'm an investment consultant relocating to the area, and I'm looking for exactly this model. I'm currently traveling for work, but I'm prepared to pay $5,000 over your asking price of the vehicle is in excellent condition as described. Cash sale, quick closing. Would this work for you? I added the specific details. The $5,000 over asking, the cash, the quick closing. Everything designed to trigger Elena's greed, to make her move fast without thinking too hard. 3 minutes later, my burner phone buzzed. Yes, very interested. When can you inspect it? I smiled. Hook set. I typed back. Excellent. I have a local assistant who can do the inspection for me. Full disclosure, he's going through a difficult time personally. Recent divorce, lost his job at a bar, a bit of a mess. But he's very thorough and knows German cars well. I pay him for these inspections. His name is Mark. You don't happen to know him, do you? I held my breath. This was the crucial moment. Would she take the bait? The response came 30 seconds later. No, don't know him. That's fine. When can he come? And there it was. Permission. She didn't recognize my name. Or maybe she did, and the prospect of seeing me broke and desperate was too delicious to pass up. Either way, she'd agreed. I texted back as Robert Wilson and set up an inspection for the next day, 2 p.m., at my address. That night, I barely slept. I kept running through the plan, looking for holes, looking for ways it could go wrong. What if the ticket wasn't there? What if she'd already found it? What if she got suspicious and called the whole thing off? But I couldn't think of another way. This was it. My one shot. I had to take it. The next day, I dressed in my oldest clothes. A ratty t-shirt I used for yard work. Jeans with a hole in the knee. I hadn't shaved in 3 days. I looked exactly like what Robert Wilson had described. A guy going through a difficult time. A mess. At 1:55 p.m., the midnight blue Audi pulled up in front of my house. Elena got out first. She was wearing designer sunglasses and an outfit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. She looked good, happy, like destroying my life had agreed with her. Then David climbed out of the passenger seat. Of course he was there. He wouldn't miss this. They saw me standing in my driveway. I watched David's face light up with barely contained glee. Elena smiled. That smile, the one that said she'd won, and I'd lost, and she was going to enjoy every second of this. David spoke first, his voice loud enough for the neighbors to hear. So you're the assistant? Man, life really knocked you down, huh, Mark? What's next? You can check our tire pressure. Maybe wash the windows? He was laughing, actually laughing. Elena joined in. They stood there next to the car I bought her, mocking me in my own driveway. I played the part, kept my head down, spoke quietly. Hey, David. Elena, thanks for bringing the car by. Mr. Wilson asked me to do a thorough inspection. He's very particular. He needs clear photos of the service records and original purchase documents. He said they should be in the glove box. Elena's smile got wider. This was what she'd come for. The chance to watch me beg for scraps. To see me reduced to hired help. To throw in my face that she'd won. Sure, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. They're in the glove box. Go ahead and get them yourself. You're the assistant now, right? That's what you do. You assist. She pulled the keys from her purse. And then, instead of handing them to me, she tossed them, threw them at my feet, like you'd throw a stick for a dog. David laughed harder. Elena just stood there with her arms crossed, watching me, waiting for me to pick up the keys off the ground. I bent down, picked up the keys, looked up at both of them. Thanks, I said, just doing my job. This was it. Permission, instruction, in front of witnesses. She'd told me to go into the glove box. She'd give me the keys. Whatever I found in there, I had every right to take. I walked to the Audi, unlocked the driver's side door, sat in the seat I'd sat in 3 months ago when I drove to Route 7, when I bought that ticket. My hands were shaking. I reached for the glove box, pressed the release. It fell open. Service records, owner's manual, old receipts from her nail salon, broken sunglasses, a lip gloss, registration paperwork. Everything exactly where it had been 3 months ago, but no lottery ticket. I started pulling things out, looking through the papers. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear in my ears. No, no, no. It had to be here. It had to be. I dug deeper, pulled out the owner's manual, and there, behind it, wedged into the crack between the plastic housing and the back of the glove box, I saw it. A crumpled piece of paper, bent, worn, the edge sticking up just barely visible. The lottery ticket. I pulled it out slowly, unfolded it. The numbers were faded but readable. 10, 22, 31, 47, 52. Powerball 18. The date stamped May 12th. The Route 7 station location printed at the top. I closed my fist around it, felt the paper crumple in my sweating palm. Behind me, I heard David's voice. Everything okay in there? You find what you need? I grabbed the service book, took a photo with my phone like I was documenting it for Robert Wilson. Then I got out of the car, walked back to where they were standing. Got everything Mr. Wilson needs, I said. I'll send him the photos. He'll be in touch about scheduling the purchase. I held out the keys to Elena. She took them, not looking at me, already bored, already moving on to whatever came next in her day. They got in the Audi and drove away. I watched them go, watched that midnight blue car disappear around the corner. David was laughing about something, probably about me, about how pathetic I looked, about how far I'd fallen. I stood in my driveway until they were gone. Then I opened my fist. In my palm, wrinkled and damp with sweat, was a lottery ticket worth $232 million after taxes. I walked inside, sat down on my empty living room floor, and started laughing. Couldn't stop. The kind of laughter that's half hysteria and half pure disbelief. They just handed me everything. Elena had literally thrown me the keys to her car and told me to take whatever I needed from it, in front of witnesses. She'd given me permission. Legal, documented permission. 3 days later, I drove to the State Lottery Commission office, brought the ticket, brought my ID, brought a lawyer, a real one this time, not Tom Chun, Someone who specialized in lottery winnings and tax law. Someone who cost $300 an hour that I'd borrowed from my credit card. The lottery officials verified the ticket, ran it through their machines 3 times, checked the serial numbers, confirmed the date and location. It was real, it was valid, and I was the legal claimant. They took my photo holding one of those giant novelty checks, asked me if I wanted my name public. I said no, anonymous claimant. They were fine with that. I signed paperwork for 8 hours, tax forms, disclosure agreements, payment schedules. I took the lump sum, $232 million after federal and state taxes. Robert Wilson, my fictional buyer, never called Elena back about the Audi, just disappeared. She probably forgot about the whole thing within a week. Just another annoying time waster who'd wasted her precious time. The Lottery Commission made the announcement 4 days later. Record Powerball jackpot claimed with just days to spare. Anonymous winner. Ticket purchased at Route 7 station in May. I watched the news from my empty living room. Watched them interview the gas station owner, who got a bonus for selling the winning ticket. Watched them speculate about who the winner might be. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't post on social media. Didn't change anything about my life. Not yet, because I knew what was coming next. It took Elena's lawyers 6 days to figure it out. The process server showed up at my door on a Tuesday morning, handed me a lawsuit, Morrison versus Morrison, petition for post-dissolution asset distribution. I read through it while standing in my doorway. It was impressive, really. Castellano had worked fast. The lawsuit claimed that the lottery ticket was purchased during our marriage using marital funds. There was therefore marital property subject to equal division, that my failure to disclose it during divorce proceedings constituted fraud, that I owed Elena half. They were demanding $116 million plus attorney's fees and damages. I called my new lawyer. Her name was Patricia Chong. She'd handled 3 major lottery disputes and won all of them. She read the lawsuit over the phone. While I waited, when she finished, she laughed. "They're going to lose," she said. "Badly. Do you still have that divorce decree?" "I do," I said. "Section 11A. Perfect. We'll see them in court." The hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. Same courthouse where my divorce had been finalized. Different courtroom. Different judge. But same marble floors. Same feeling of your entire life being decided by strangers in robes. Elena and David sat on one side with Castellano and 2 associates. They'd brought a whole team. They looked confident, like they'd already won. I sat on the other side with Patricia, just the 2 of us. We didn't need a team. The judge was a man in his 50s named Harold Chun, no relation to Tom. He looked tired, like he'd been settling disputes all morning and wished he was anywhere else. Castellano stood up, launched into his argument. He was good. I'll give him that. He talked about marital property laws, about how lottery tickets purchased during marriage are joint assets, about how the ticket was bought with funds from a joint bank account, about how I deliberately concealed this asset during divorce proceedings. He made me sound like a criminal, like I'd planned this whole thing, like I was a con artist who'd stolen from his own wife. Patricia let him talk. She didn't interrupt, didn't object, just sat there taking notes. When Castellano finished, Judge Chen looked at her. "Ms. Chong, your response?" Patricia stood up. She moved slowly, deliberately, like someone who had all the time in the world because the outcome was already decided. "Your Honor," she said. Her voice was calm, conversational. "We don't dispute when the ticket was purchased. We don't dispute that it was bought during the marriage. We don't even dispute that it was purchased with marital funds. None of that matters." She walked to the front of the courtroom, placed a document on the judge's bench. What matters is a divorce decree from July 12th. Page 7. Section 11A. Final settlement and waiver of future claims. Judge Chin picked up the document, started reading. Patricia continued. Both parties signed an agreement waiving all claims to future assets, income, inheritance, and specifically lottery winnings or unforeseen financial windfalls. My opponent. She nodded at Castellano, was so focused on securing the alibi room for his client that he agreed to this language without consideration of the consequences. Castellano jumped up. Your Honor, that clause was intended to prevent claims on future income, not assets acquired during the marriage. Patricia didn't miss a beat. The clause specifically mentions lottery winnings. Your Honor, there's no ambiguity. Both parties acknowledged the possibility of lottery winnings and explicitly waived any claims to them. This was a negotiated agreement. Both sides had counsel. Both sides signed voluntarily. But the ticket was purchased before the agreement was signed, Castellano said. His voice was getting louder, more desperate. It's marital property. The ticket was purchased before the agreement. Patricia agreed, but the winnings occurred after. The ticket had no value until the numbers were drawn. The drawing happened after the divorce was filed. The claim was made after the divorce was final. Under the plain language of Section 11A, Mrs. Morrison waived her right to any portion of these winnings. Judge Shin was still reading, flipping through pages, checking dates. The courtroom was silent. Finally, Judge Shin looked up. Mr. Castellano, he said, did you draft the settlement agreement? I reviewed and approved it, Your Honor. Did you read Section 11A before agreeing to it? Castellano hesitated, just for a second, but that second said everything. I did, Your Honor, but there's no but, Mr. Castellano. Your client signed a binding agreement waiving claims to lottery winnings. The language is clear. The intent is clear. This court will not rewrite contracts because one party regrets the terms they agreed to. Judge Shin looked at Elena. She was staring at the table, her face pale. David was whispering something to her, probably trying to figure out how this had gone so wrong. The petition is denied, Judge Shin said. The lottery winnings belong solely to Mr. Morrison pursuant to the terms of the divorce decree. Mrs. Morrison waived her rights to such windfalls. He hit his gavel. One sharp crack. Case dismissed. I walked out of that courtroom with $232 million and no obligation to share a single penny with the woman who tried to destroy me. In the hallway, Castellano was already on his phone, probably telling another client he'd just lost a $100 million case. Elena stood against the wall. She wasn't crying, just staring at nothing, processing. David was next to her, but they weren't touching, weren't talking. I walked past them without saying a word. Didn't gloat, didn't smile, just walked past like they were strangers. Patricia caught up with me at the elevator. She was smiling. That might be the most expensive legal mistake I've ever seen, she said. Castellano's going to be dealing with malpractice claims for years. 6 months later, I heard through Sarah that the alibi room had filed for bankruptcy. Turns out running a bar takes actual skill, takes knowing your customers, takes understanding inventory and staffing and 1,000 small details that make the difference between profit and loss. Elena and David had none of that. They'd driven away the regulars, alienated the staff, made bad business decisions. Within 4 months, the place was bleeding money. Within 6, it was underwater. The building went up for auction. I found out about it through a legal notice in the paper. Foreclosure sale. Minimum bid $30,000. I showed up to the auction. I didn't plan to, but that morning I woke up and decided I wanted to see it. Wanted to see the place I'd built. The place that had been stolen from me. The auction was held in a conference room at a downtown law office. About 15 people showed up. Property investors, mostly. People looking for cheap real estate to flip. Elena and David were there too, sitting in the back. They looked rough. Elena had lost weight. David's expensive watch was gone. They looked like people who'd had everything and lost it all. The auctioneer started the bidding at $30,000. A few people raised their hands. The price climbed slowly. $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. I waited, watched, let them bid it up. At $75,000, there were only 3 bidders left. A developer who wanted to tear it down and build apartments. A restaurant group looking to rebrand. And a quiet guy in the front row who might have been a property speculator. The auctioneer called for $80,000. The developer raised his hand. $85,000. The restaurant group. $90,000. The speculator. The developer and restaurant group dropped out. Too expensive for a building that needed work. The speculator was the only one left. Going once, the auctioneer said. Going twice. I raised my hand. $100,000. The room went quiet. People turned to look at me. The speculator shook his head. He was out. The auctioneer looked around. Any other bids? Silence. Sold. To bidder 17 for $100,000. I walked to the front. Signed the paperwork. Wrote a check. The building was mine. The alibi room. The place I'd spent 15 years of my life building. The place Elena had stolen. Now belonged to me again. I looked back at Elena and David. They were watching me. Elena's face was unreadable. David looked angry, like he wanted to say something, but couldn't figure out what. I didn't say anything to them. Just took my paperwork and left. A week later, I hired a demolition crew. They tore down the alibi room in 3 days. Reduced it to rubble. Every brick, every board, every memory. On that lot, I'm building an animal shelter. A big one with my mother's name on it. The Morrison Family Animal Sanctuary. Elena's going to drive past it every day and see a building full of rescue animals named after the woman whose birthday numbers won me a fortune. I heard through mutual friends that Elena and David split up 4 months after the bankruptcy. Turns out their relationship was built on money and the thrill of destroying someone together. When those things disappeared, there wasn't anything left. Elena tried to reach out last month. Long text message full of apologies and regret. I deleted it without reading. In my new office, above my desk, I keep that lottery ticket framed. The crumpled $2 slip with my parents' numbers on it. $232 million. People say the best revenge is living well. I don't agree. The best revenge is methodical, cold-blooded justice. It's watching the people who tried to destroy you hand you the keys to their own destruction. It's a woman throwing car keys at your feet like you're a dog, not knowing she's handing you a grenade whose pin you pulled 3 months earlier. This wasn't karma. This wasn't luck. This was Section 11A. This was Castellano's arrogance and Elena's greed. This was patience and one forgotten lottery ticket in a glove box she never cleaned. They wanted to bury me. Instead, they buried themselves. And me? I'm just a guy who bought a $2 ticket with his dead parents' birthdays on it, who lost everything, who got it all back, plus interest. That's not a revenge story. That's justice. And justice, unlike revenge, is something you can build a life on.